Welcome to Advocate Today. I'm Aaron Dean. There's a new report out that says that the world is facing an unprecedented water crisis and it could get worse. According to one study, a quarter of the world's population faces what they call extreme high water stress. The report comes from the World Resources Institute. They say 25 countries are using almost all the water that they have. And if there is a drought, some could run out of water. An additional 1 billion people could face water stress by 2050, according to that report as well. The Institute did suggest several solutions to save water. Those include preserving and restoring wetlands and finding more efficient watering techniques on farms. AP African American Studies classes will no longer count towards a student's graduation in Arkansas. That's a new ruling from the state's Department of Education. This after the governor of Arkansas signed an executive order that prohibits critical race theory in schools. Teachers and school board members in Little Rock say the course is a part of American history.
This course is an essential and important part of American history, but what it does is provide students with original documents so that they can learn the critical thinking skills to be able to interpret and make their own decisions about these topics. So it is the opposite of indoctrination.
100 students at Little Rock's Central High are enrolled in the class for this school year. The course will be available to all schools beginning next year. According to a recent Pew Research study, 56% of adults believe that focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion is a good thing. 61% said that their company has policies that ensure fairness in hiring. But it has become a partisan issue. Dave Wilkin and his company, 10,000 Coffees, work with corporations and institutions on this very issue. Hi, Dave. How are you today? Thanks for joining us.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so can you give us a little bit about your background on yourself, of course, and 10KC and the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, so nice to meet you. My name's Dave. I'm the co-founder of 10KC. We're the world's largest diversity-founded mentoring and networking platform. So we help organizations like Nike, J&J, JP Morgan, BMO build and scale best-in-class mentoring, networking, and sponsorship programs. As a gay entrepreneur myself, we built 10KC with a diversity-first lens to help everybody access opportunity like networking and mentoring, which is where the majority of opportunity happens. So tech entrepreneur by trade, but of course, as a diversity-founded entrepreneur, the topics that we're going to talk about today are deeply important for me professionally and personally.
And, we are seeing a breakdown in DEI programs and learning at institutions, state governments, and other organizations across the nation. What are you seeing from your vantage point right now when it comes to the state of DEI?
I mean, so much has changed, right? In 2020, with the murder of George Floyd, organizations finally realized they need to do something. They need to set goals. They need to hold themselves accountable, and they did that at the board level. However, what they are struggling to do is create scalable change to actually achieve these diversity and inclusion goals. And I think the next chapter where organizations are struggling, which is why we're seeing lots of layoffs, why we're seeing organizations step back, is that the next chapter is really around inclusion and holding everybody not only accountable, but enabling everybody to play their part in making higher performing, more inclusive organizations. And although they've set these goals, organizations without scalable mentoring and sponsorship and networking, they're just not going to create the inclusive organizations that are ultimately what we all need to get to.
And affirmative action was also just struck down recently by the Supreme Court, furthering that divide for some to get a good education. Do you think actions like this can impact institutions and companies outside of education?
We're already seeing it. Organizations are closely following what happened in higher education because they're next. And organizations have, like anything in innovation, they have to change how they create programs, create access, and learn quickly from what they saw in higher education so that they can actually achieve inclusion, right? We know that visible minorities, underrepresented groups need mentoring, networking, sponsorship more than people who might just get it through their kind of traditional means. However, now organizations need to find technology solutions to scale those programs without doing it in ways that the colleges have just learned from. And so organizations are taking note, and I think it's challenging, but on the other side, it's actually exciting because it's challenging organizations to take the next chapter of innovation where they create a lot more openness and programming to support their underrepresented talent. So I think it's now about how organizations can actually innovate and prepare for what this next chapter will be.
Yeah. And of course, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what does this mean for the future of education and workforces when it comes to DEI initiatives? How much of a
I
big
think
are we going to see, I guess?
I mean, it's now being fully put under question. I think every organization has created specific programs like mentoring and sponsorship specifically around race, whether it's for Black employees, BIPOC employees, and that's now going to have to change. Organizations will have to work with their technology providers to change the different criteria so that they can provide access to these programs, not necessarily based on race, but around things like the barriers that they might face. But again, I think that'll provide organizations who are ready to innovate with actually a whole new playbook that will help them continue to rise certain talent that faces multiple barriers, which is often racialized and underrepresented communities, but it's going to allow them to also potentially get more allies involved, which is critical as well.
Yeah. In your experience, what are ways that institutions and companies can, be better about adopting DEI programs, and what impact would that have when it comes to the adoption of it?
I mean, organizations that figure themselves out around how to create scalable DE&I programs, we know that they create higher profit, they're higher performing, and they're just, from a human perspective, it's just important. Now, organizations need to move from things like Excel spreadsheets to run their mentoring programs, which again, networks and mentoring is a key tactic to ensure underrepresented talent is included and has a voice and has access to leaders. The challenge is most organizations are running these programs on Excel spreadsheets. They're doing them manually. They're reaching so few employees, and they need us to take technology to actually innovate those. And I think one of the stats that you might find alarming, and this is just from a gender perspective, but a lot of organizations leave their diversity and inclusion programming to serendipity. They just say, hey, go find a mentor or go build your network at our organizations. It's critical for your success. But if you think just from a gender perspective, men are 12 times less likely to meet with a female colleague than a male colleague. And that's just from gender. So how is it possibly okay to expect employees to all build the relationships inside their organizations to achieve their DE&I goals? And so organizations are going to have to get going because the business case is clear, and also just it's the right thing to do.
And can you speak on, you talked about mentoring and stuff like that, but can you speak on what impact a mentor or just networking can have on someone from a marginalized community going through their career?
I mean, we know that 85% of opportunities happen through networks and relationships. But the reality is that underrepresented communities do not build these relationships in the same way as their majority type colleagues. And so you might hire underrepresented colleagues, but if you don't provide them with networks and relationships, they just will not get access to the same opportunities. And so if organizations do not provide networks and mentors, they're going to see them churn, leave the organization faster. In many organizations, they see as much as 2 to 3 times faster churn of underrepresented talent than others. So while they're doing so much to bring in this really amazing diverse talent, if they don't create networks, mentors, and sponsors, they just leave. And that's a costly problem, usually around at least twice the salary is the cost of an employee leaving the organization. So that's the business case for it, but organizations need technology to actually make these D&I commitments come to life, especially in the wake of the Supreme Court case.
Thanks so much for watching Advocate Today. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even subscribe on our YouTube channel. For the Advocate channel, I'm Aaron Dean, and this was Advocate Today.